They say silence is golden, but they never tell you it can drive a man mad. I used to think noise was the enemy, the clatter of the city, the television buzzing, the endless chatter of people who don't know when to stop. Now I know silence is worse. Silence remembers everything you tried to drown. It sits there beside you, patient, merciless, whispering your own thoughts back at you until you beg for static. My name, it doesn't matter much anymore, but I was a man who couldn't fall asleep without a screen glowing somewhere in the dark. I thought the noise was comfort. I thought it was life. Turns out, it was a slow funeral for the mind. When I was younger, I loved the night. It felt like freedom. The one part of the day that didn't demand anything from me. I'd stay up late after work, flipping channels, listening to the hum of the TV as if it were an old friend who never judged. The world outside would sleep, but I stayed awake, a cigarette in hand, a beer sweating on the table, watching faces that weren't real, tell stories that weren't mine. That blue glow filled the room, to fill the silence that stretched too long since my wife stopped talking to me after dinner. She said I never really listened, that even when I was home, I wasn't present. Maybe she was right. I used to joke, I'm just winding down, but what I was really doing was shutting out my own thoughts. The truth is, I was afraid of silence, because silence meant remembering. In the quiet, I could hear the things I didn't say to her, to my kids, to myself. I could feel the weight of every small failure pressing in from the corners of the room. The noise was a shield. The flicker of the screen was the closest thing I had to company. I convinced myself that as long as something was playing, I wasn't really alone. That's how habits are born, not out of pleasure, but out of avoidance. Over the years, sleep became something I envied in other people. My coworkers used to complain about how early they woke up. I envied that too. I'd lie in bed long after midnight, my brain still wired from the endless scroll of channels. Then, later, from the endless scroll of the internet, I'd close my eyes and see the afterimage of screens behind my eyelids, bright shapes, half-remembered faces, fragments of headlines. I told myself it didn't matter. I was functional. I could work. I could laugh. I could keep going. That's the lie. Every insomniac tells himself that you can outrun exhaustion with momentum. The doctor called it sleep deprivation first, then chronic insomnia, then neurological fatigue. What he really meant was, I'd been stealing hours from my own life, and the debt was coming due. I nodded, pretended I'd change, pretended to care. But when I got home, the first thing I did was turn the TV back on. It was easier than facing the quiet. It's strange how we keep returning to the things that hurt us just because they're familiar. The noise became like oxygen. The silence felt like suffocation. When my wife, Helen, got sick, I didn't know what to say to her. So I did what I always did. I stayed up. The night she passed, the television was still playing. A cooking show. I remember watching a man knead dough while the machines in her room beeped out her last heartbeat. I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't bear to let silence in at that moment. I thought it would break me, but it broke me anyway. After she was gone, I didn't even bother pretending to live during the day. I existed between midnight and dawn. I stopped answering calls. I stopped opening curtains. The world outside became a rumor. I told myself I preferred the night because it was peaceful. But there's a difference between peace and numbness. Peace heals. Numbness rots. I filled every waking hour with noise TV, radio, YouTube, late-night talk shows, infomercials. I even bought one of those white noise machines they sell for better sleep. The irony of using manufactured silence to drown out real silence wasn't lost on me. I just didn't care anymore. Then came the shaking, my hands trembling like loose wires, the headaches, the forgetfulness, the confusion. I'd wake up not knowing what day it was, if I'd eaten, if I'd showered. My daughter, Emily, found me one afternoon, staring at the screen, a blank look on my face, drool at the corner of my mouth. I thought it had been an hour. It had been 9. She turned the TV off, and for the first time in years, the house was completely silent. I panicked. I screamed at her to turn it back on. She cried instead. I told her she didn't understand that I needed it, that it kept me calm. But looking back, I wasn't calm. I was caged. The doctor said my brain was exhausted, not diseased, just overworked, years of overstimulation. A nervous system that never shut down. You've forgotten how to rest. The neurologist said, your mind is running even when your eyes are closed. I laughed. That's called getting old. But even he didn't laugh back. There's something humiliating about realizing you've forgotten how to sleep. It's the most natural thing in the world. And I lost it like a misplaced key. The worst nights were the ones when the power went out. The house would go black. The air thick with quiet. I'd hear the hum of my own pulse, the creak of the walls, the whisper of wind outside. I'd start sweating, pacing, waiting for the lights to come back. The silence wasn't empty, it was alive. It spoke with all the voices I'd ignored for years. The apologies I never made, the words I never said, the laughter that used to fill the house. It was unbearable because it was honest. People think insomnia is just sleeplessness. It's not. It's an addiction to avoidance. You keep yourself awake because you're afraid of what dreams will say when you finally close your eyes. And once you've trained your mind to fear stillness, even sleep feels like dying. I used to tell myself I'd rest when things got better. But life doesn't reward postponement. It punishes it. The medication helped for a while. Blue pills, white pills, soft promises. But they didn't fix the root. The root was me, and I was rotten from routine. I traded sunlight for screens, people for pixels, rest for distraction. I thought that if I stayed busy, I wouldn't have to feel. But feeling finds you anyway. It always does. Now I live in a care home where they turn off the TV at 9 p.m. sharp. At first, I hated it. I'd lie awake, counting the seconds, listening to the hallway clock tick like a metronome for regret. Then, slowly, something strange happened. I started hearing the world again. The rustle of trees outside the window, the sound of my own breathing, the nurse's shoes squeaking down the hall. It wasn't peaceful yet, but it was real. I started closing my eyes and picturing the faces of the people I'd ignored for so long. My wife, my daughter, even old friends I stopped calling back. Memory replaced noise, and for the first time, it didn't hurt as much as I expected. Maybe silence isn't punishment after all. Maybe it's the final teacher. If you're listening to this and you fall asleep to screens, I know what you're thinking. It's harmless. It's just a little noise. It helps you unwind. But noise is a liar. It doesn't calm you. It keeps you numb. Every night, you drown out the quiet. You lose a piece of yourself that might have spoken up. Turn it off, even for one night. Sit with the silence. Let it tell you what you've been avoiding. It will hurt, yes, but it's an honest kind of hurt, the kind that heals instead of rots. People talk about dying in their sleep like it's a peaceful ending. I don't know if that's true, but I do know this. If I could go back, I'd learn how to live in silence long before I learned how to die in it. I'd watch fewer screens and more sunsets. I'd fall asleep to the sound of breathing beside me, not the laughter of strangers on a glowing box. The nurses say, I sleep better now. Maybe that's because I finally stopped fighting the dark. Maybe I've learned that silence isn't the absence of life. It's the sound of what's left when you've said everything that matters. So if you can still hear the quiet, listen to it. It's not emptiness. It's your soul, waiting for you to finally turn the volume down.